Hi folks, you're with Tacitus today, your pushback channel, and thank you for joining this live stream. In this essay, I'd like to talk about a role that I saw advertised, and it's called Director of Women's Empowerment. And it's for an international NGO that gets lavish funding from the United Nations and also Soros front organizations. But it's also registered and declared as a charity around the world. So they don't have to pay any taxes, and this gives them a very special status. Now, I don't mind if it's a charity. Then there's a cause for tax exemption. If they're genuinely helping the needy, this sort of thing. There's a lot of people living on the street in Australia. Are they helping them? So, but they're actually a bunch of activists, political activists. They're not a charity. I mean, far from it. There's nothing they do that's charitable. Everything has a political angle, and therefore I don't believe they should be tax exempt. So now let me just go to the job description here. So Director of Women's Empowerment. Now, why you would need a women's empowerment director in a Western world where women are the most pampered creatures ever in the history of human civilization. So I'm not sure what empowerment there. But again, using the Marxist prism, which is what they do, there's always someone who isn't having an equal outcome with someone who's well off. The mentally handicapped, physically handicapped person isn't having the same life outcome as the very fit, very intelligent person, for example. So that is enough to say, well, there's a victim. We have to do something. There's a victim. And if you've got a problem with that, you damn fascist Nazi Hitler. So there's always a way of ascertaining and creating victims that require guilty and shaming all the rest of us. And it's a real industry. It's a big industry, and it's worth billions, as is the women's issues budgets around the world. Billions are spent, and nothing ever seems to get solved. The problem, or each year, the problem always seems to get a bit worse and a bit requiring more and more money. So just demonstrating, of course, that it's a scam. There's nothing, not doing anything to actually solve real problems. It's a scam. Now, here's the opening. This is the empowerment director, and I'm reading sort of parts of the advert here, sections from it. We embrace diversity, and we embrace cultural diversity and religious diversity. We take our responsibilities seriously. We were committed to a safe environment. So stringent recruitment processes make sure that the most suitable people are working in our programs. There you go. Now, you don't have to go. You can just get online and have a look at the sort of people they hire. I mean, we're talking, your classic United Nations hacks, goons, activists, blue and green haired gender studies students. You can imagine. I mean, they're all seriously left-wing people, or seriously committed to the globalist project anyway, and using that Marxist sort of thing to crush the rest of us and get us out of the way so the globalist project can steamroll on unopposed. We provide our staff with all the training necessarily. Now they've got a little section here on children. I'm not sure what I'm guessing it means here that they want to support or empower women who have children. Maybe that's not clear, but I suppose you could read between the lines. Now they claim to be they claim to have sort of religious affiliations, but I don't know. That's rather vague, and if you go onto their website, then that's similarly vague. So I'm not sure exactly. Maybe it means they tolerate religion, I suppose. Now they're all, so they claim here about economic empowerment. This is their big thing, and so they go through what they see as the key planks, in their view at least, of what women's economic empowerment involves. And it will be in line with the new project guidelines and the new framework and the new technical guidance, so whatever the fuck that means. There'll be continuous development and improvement of the resources and identification of good practices. Do you think they'd have worked that out by now? I don't know. That sounds like it's jobs for a trainee, but it's called the Director of Women's Empowerment. And they talk about, meta-analysis and various projects, very vague here. So they've got a gender-inclusive financial literacy package. Now, they go on to talk about some of the countries where they're involved. Now, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of them. These countries are the most impoverished, dirt poor. Life expectancy of if you make it to 40, you're really kicking ass in these places. Infant mortality is just off the charts. But instead of working out how to feed the people, they want gender inclusive financial literacy, and they're running training workshops in all these dirt poor countries. Now, how they get these women to turn up is by offering free gifts, free transport, free gifts, free giveaways, and that's so they've got the captive audience. They're 20 miles away from home. They're going to need the nice, expensive 4-wheel drive, air-conditioned vehicles to drive them back again. So they give them free gifts and free food and all sorts of things to get these women to come. But they're going to teach gender-inclusive financial literacy to people who are illiterate in their own language, let alone any other language. And I mean, these people live as hand-to-mouth subsistence peasants. And so what these folks are going to do, they're going to talk about Western financial literacy to these illiterate, dirt poor subsistence peasants. I mean, that's really fucking smart. I mean, wow. I mean, who thought that one up? And again, these dirt poor countries. And they're talking about maintaining close relationships with the local native population and so on. Support business development to make sure that women-only businesses are funded and not other businesses. Now, we've got this in the West at the moment, and it's happens in Australia and of course, the United States, Britain. If you're a black woman, the idea is you come to the top of the pile, no matter how crazy or useless your idea is for a new business, or how lazy and incompetent you are. If the likelihood of success of the business is 0, they don't care because you meet the race and gender quotas, they'll fund it. So if you're a straight white male who comes along with a much more viable business idea and one where you've got a track record, it's got a decent chance of working out, you're still not going to get the money because you don't have the race and gender thing going on. So they're going to do this in these dirt poor third world countries that desperately need successful businesses. But they know they're only going to fund women-only businesses because it's inclusive. I mean, talk about, and they're hurting these people by doing it. That's what the bit that galls me. If they're really doing something for these people, I'd be all for it. I've done a lot of traveling around the world on business. I've seen what a dirt poor, dead bodies in the street society looks like. I've seen it right up close. And it's a horrible thing. And I think things should be done to help. But instead of actually helping with real help, like digging wells, building roads, building bridges, building irrigation, building drainage so their crops don't get washed away every time there's a bit of rain, and doing that sort of stuff, that's what's going to help these people. That's what's going to make their life different. And if they've got a good road that isn't impassable in the bad weather, that means they can much more easily access other facilities, medical facilities, for example, at the nearest town, or selling their fruit and vegetables in the market. They can make it there, because in these places, if it rains, it can be 3 to 4 months of the year, you can't go anywhere, other than sort of a few yards down the road, because the roads are so screwed up. But if they had good roads, good bridges, all these sorts of things, then the wells being dug and all sorts of stuff, then the quality of life of these people would improve immeasurably. Then you can start looking at gender empowerment or these other esoteric Marxist bullshit things. But gee whiz, at least make sure these people have enough to eat first. Then you think about that. But they're sending around these bullshit activists, handsomely funded, by the way, these bullshit activists to teach women these Marxist race theory and gender theory. I mean, fuck. Getting to, also, here's another thing, they want to get to government operatives, and in these poor countries, they want to get to government operatives, and there's a lot of extortion used here. The government people are often tribal, so if you give money to members of their tribe, it could be to do whatever, then the tribal head guys in the government looks like a real hotshot, looks like a big man. So, and then you slip him a few bucks too, and that's kind of how it works in those places. But they're wanting to use that bribery to say, well, we'll only give you that money provided you allow black lesbian-only businesses. So they're deliberately, and this creates an attitude. These people may go, oh, okay, well, I'll take your money. But the resentment, the simmering hatred and resentment that causes cannot be overstated. And these people seem to have no idea what they're doing when they do this. So they want to set up sort of, not schools to teach literacy necessarily, but they want to set up ideological schools to teach Marxist gender theory to women in these dirt poor countries. That's going to go down well. That's really going to, what an achievement that's going to be. Now they're saying they try to use a holistic approach to promote what they say women's advancement, access to opportunity, service, resources, and access to the facilities supplied by this group. They want women to make the decision in households and in markets and in work life. So that and again, these are peasants who can barely enough to eat, living subsistence lifestyles, illiterate in their own language. They've got to walk 10 miles to get to the nearest fresh water supply, all this sort of stuff. But they're concerned about the ratio of paid to unpaid work that's being performed by women in these subsistence households. I mean, you've got to be kidding. I mean, seriously. These are people who can't even feed themselves. These are people, 1 out of every 2 children is dying at birth. And they want to teach this. I mean, it's fucking bullshit. And they more guff about equity and inclusion and equitable policies, equitable institutions, and that they can rejig or rewrite the social norms of that society. So in come these white folks who think they're such fucking hot shit, with their nice shining 4-wheel drives and their nice clean clothes and all that sort of thing, helicopters that come to pick them up and whisk them away. Here are these people coming along who's saying, well, these are the social norms that you peasants should live by because we're giving you inclusion and equity. That's what we're doing. I mean, Jesus Christ. I mean, if these people weren't throwing money around all over the place, these natives will tell them to piss off. Seriously, give us the means to feed ourselves. That's the priority. Give us the means to not have 50% infant mortality at birth. So they go on in the thing here about inclusive market systems development, INSD, and they're very much a government or offshoot of government bureaucracy, financial inclusion, FI. And economic empowerment, OE, and it just goes on and on with buzzwords and buzz phrases. Clearly, they don't know what the fuck they're doing. They're living in this ideological fantasy world. So there has to be increased prioritization and momentum driving the way forward for social equity, yada, yada, yada. They also want to hustle governments for Western governments for grants and handouts and so on. So, so in addition to the economic empowerment of women, there's a requirement to work with people who are, or to ensure the equality of people who have physical and social disability. Social disability meaning, I think, the way this reads, they're lesbians or homosexuals or something. Well, lesbians, it's supposed to be for women. And physical disability, so they can have gender equality. And there should be special advisors and whatnot to come along and ensure that extreme disability is not a barrier to equality. Oh, fuck. How stupid Western gender studies can you get in you? So they're and so they sort of get on there. And this is the applicant that we want here, or so they claim. So they want really 5+ years working with an NGO on the ground, including particularly in the gendered area and in relation to gender. Gender. It's all over the place. So just reading between the lines here, I'd say, you must be experienced in implementing gender transformative. Oh, Jesus. So cross-cultural. Targeting harmful social norms in gender relations. It goes on. I just the way that reads is, I think they want a white person. That seems to come across here, because there's a certain sneering condescension, I think, of brown natives and the way they live, and I would speculate they want a lesbian here. I think that's fairly clear, and so they want a white lesbian activist with at least 5 years working, on the ground for activist NGOs, and then they have an interesting thing here that they expect to be able to read and write. Wow, and you're a social media influencer. So they really expect a PhD. In fact, they say it directly here. They expect a PhD in international political economy and gender studies. That's really what they want. So they want a lesbian gender PhD to do this, and they're pretty clear about it. So they're claiming here they've got thousands upon thousands of staff around the world. I don't know whether they do, but anyway, so that's the sort of that's you don't often see adverts that explicit in the public domain, and so just having a look at that, it gives you a clear idea of the sort of activist cabal that's out there. So this person will already be, there's a round robin of these activists. They don't go from one activist NGO to the next into the government office of some politician, into the media, back into the NGO. This is this constant moving back and forth. They become university lecturers, teachers in high school, all this sort of thing. And so it forms this international activist cabal. Now, the money that they're paid, bear in mind that they get a salary of about 200,000 for this role, but because of the nature of the work, they don't have to pay any tax. And they also, all their food and accommodation, transport is all paid for. And they're in third world countries anyway, everything's cheap. So their cost of living is about zero. And so this is the equivalent, given again food and accommodation, but this is the equivalent of a sort of a $500,000 a year salary if you were just staying put in LA or Sydney or London or something. That's US dollars, $500K US dollars. This is the equivalent of that, given all the benefits and the tax exemption and these sorts of things. So it's a well-paid gig. In fact, it's a plum job. The fact that you've got to be an angry lesbian gender studies PhD to get it is another matter. But it goes to show that they're not interested actually in doing something. I mean, if I had the job of, not that I ever would, by the way, but if I had the job of improving the lives of, it could be anybody, it could be women, doesn't matter. I'd be looking at the real practical stuff. Gee whiz, those women have to walk 20 miles every day to get fresh water. Let's solve that. Look at these women; they have to go over these, piss poor roads to get to any sort of medical care that their kids may need. Let's put a proper road. Let's make sure we make that easier. Let's maybe have a small bus or something that comes. I'd be looking always at the practical. How can we make these people's lives better? Have more food on the table, lower mortality, more literacy, and so on and so forth. Better facilities. Drainage around the village doesn't get wiped out in floods, or drainage around the fields so the crops don't get spoilt in the bad weather. All of these sorts of things. That would be my focus. But these people are looking on fucking gender relation. That's the only issue. I mean, you've got to be kidding. But it shows how fucked up the Western NGO system is. And I don't think these people deep down really appreciate it. I think they'll take the free money, but I think deep down they hate us for it. You've been with Tacitus today at your Pushback channel, and thank you for listening.